So thank you, John. Thank you for keeping this lively online events, ongoing events going. And thank you for everyone for showing up, making some time out of your life schedule, work, etc., to explore these things together. My request would be, if you can, whether or not you will be in the breakout rooms, whether you can join the end, the last half hour or 40 minutes, because there'll be more of a space for discussions, questions, and more questions from me. Probably not many answers, but for a general wrapping up together, also to get a sense of where you are with this. Okay, so Zen and therapy. I'm not going to try to define what Zen is. In fact, what is Zen is a typical Koan enigmatic question that cannot be answered. But what I can say is what Zen is not, according to what I have understood from this weird and wonderful practice, weird and wonderful tradition. Personally, I've been practicing meditation since tender age, 1980, India, and then formally within a Zen community, within a Zen Japanese lineage from 1996. That means I've been sitting on my ass for pretty a long time, and I'm still trying to figure out what it's all about. So what Zen is not for me, Zen is not spirituality. Spirituality, you could say it's a kind of spirituality, but I don't think it is spirituality, because spirituality means spirit. And Zen is, as I understand it, is an embodied practice. This body, this very body, is the Buddha. If you can accept it, if you can accept that very simple, wondrous, mysterious fact, this body is what experiences insight, what experiences feelings, emotions, and perhaps some kind of understanding is always in Zen is through the body. The body is the great reason. Zen is not mindfulness. It has mindfulness element in it, but it's not mindfulness full stop. And if it's true that Zen is a kind of shorthand for Buddhism, which is the bureaucratic name for the teachings of the Dharma, ism, Buddhism, the teachings of the Buddha, then it is awareness, keen awareness, mindfulness of impermanence. Mindfulness, not mindfulness by itself as some kind of special attention, special beaming light on things, or it is also not what mindfulness stress reduction program has become. If anything, Zen is stress induction. If you are truly practicing and you're not at some point getting anxious or stressed out about the practice, you're not practicing properly. Because Zen practice is about looking straight in the eye of fundamental, enigmatic, existential questions. So I would argue that Zen is not mindfulness in the way what mindfulness has become. Also, Zen is not the so-called non-dual, or like our American colleagues like to call it, the non-dual. The non-dual. It is not the non-dual Zen. Zen is dualistic and non-dualistic. Zen is living in the world of contradictions, living in the world of separation, but also gaining an insight into the other dimension, the absolute, but also moving back and forth from one dimension to another. So it's not, Zen is nothing to do with the achievement of some spiritual insight that then the practitioner goes around parading. One example in the tradition is if for example, you practice meditation regularly and perhaps by yourself or in a group, and then maybe you reach a certain level of commitment when some kind of energy is built, and maybe you reach an understanding, and maybe you have an insight. In the tradition, we say, when you reach the insight, make sure you wipe it off and hide it. It is a little bit like having some dog shit on the tip of your nose. You don't go around showing it to the world. You wipe it off and you hide it. And I have met colleagues. I'm thinking of one colleague who died a few years back, who used to say, I am fully actualized. I am self-actualized because I've done all the right thing. I've done my meditation practice. I have engaged with psychotherapy, and now I'm fully actualized. Well, that's an example of parading dog shit on your nose. The sensible thing, again, is to wipe it off. An example of this could be, let's say you have met a fantastic new boyfriend, a fantastic new girlfriend and lover, and you think love is fantastic. The more you go on about it, the more boring you become. And the more you think it's special, and the more people will think, what's the big deal? So with any milestone, with any important experience, including spiritual insight, the best thing is to move on and forget it. An example, Zhou Shu or Chao Chu in the Chinese tradition was a great Zen teacher and Zen master. It's the famous dialogue. The student goes to Zhou Shu and says, what is enlightenment? And Zhou Shu replies, did you have your lunch? Yes. Now wash your plate. That could mean many things. It could mean, first of all, a keen awareness in what's right in front of you. So I had my lunch. Rather than daydreaming about enlightenment, the right thing to do after I had my lunch is to wash my plate. The second meaning is more metaphorical. Have you had your lunch could mean, did you have your insight? Did you gain your spiritual insight? Yes. Now forget it. Move on. Put the kettle on. Do the next thing. Take care of paying the bills, etc., and so forth. So, and in the texts that I'm going to look at, in a moment. This is called forgetting Buddhahood. So-called achievement of Buddhahood, of the state of the Buddha, means forgetting it. If I know that I have achieved it, it means I've made it into a thing. I have reified the experience. What I'm going to draw on now is a text by a Japanese monk who lived in the 13th century. His name was Dogen, who was the founder of the Soto school. He lived in the 1300 from 1200 to 1253, died at the age of 53. In his time, Buddhism had become stale, had become a routine activity that people did as a kind of a mental hygiene, pretty much like we do it nowadays. I do a little mindfulness over the Saturday or the weekend. And so for that reason, he went and traveled to China and came back with an insight and experience and founded this school, Soto Zen, in Japan. And when he was asked, what did you gain there? He said, I understood through long and arduous training that the mouth is horizontal and the nose is vertical. It was the understanding of great, long spiritual training. He was not only a religious leader, a great practitioner of the way, was also a philosopher and of unparalleled understanding and wisdom. And some of his philosophy is so subtle that he completely, long before Descartes, long before Western philosophy became what it became, he, in a way, he had some insight that go beyond that. And I will try and illustrate why that is the case. And then I will try and make some links, of course, to the other strange practice and profession, psychotherapy. In what way this insight, Zen, can be useful to therapy, and perhaps in what way therapy can be useful to meditative practice or Zen. So Dogen, for the benefit of his students and monks and practitioners of the way, wrote several fascicles called the Shobogens, or the treasure of the true Dharma eye. And I'm going to look at some aspect from a particular fascicle called Genjo Koan, which means manifesting suchness. Manifesting suchness. In this text, Dogen says, through the practice of meditation, of zazen, of sitting meditation, the immediate presence of all things manifests. The immediate presence, or rather the presencing of things, comes to the fore, manifests itself. This means every phenomenon in the world is not particularly hidden. It does not have to be revealed through some special philosophy, through some special form of study, or through some special form of inquiry. The truth of existence is not something that has to be unveiled. It is not, as Heidegger would have it, aletheia. It's not an unveiling. Everything is manifesting, is presenting itself, if only we can perceive it. Let me stop for a moment, and I would like to invite you to a few minutes of tuning in together in silence. So, however you are sitting, I suggest you sit with your back straight and with your eyes half closed, and with the gaze unfocused, soft and unfocused. Notice how you're sitting. Notice any tension. Simply be there, be here, and pay attention this very moment to how you are breathing. No need to change the rhythm of your breathing. Simply notice it. And allow and welcome anything that wants to come up to come up. Please don't meditate. Just sit. If there are sounds around you or in the street, pay attention to the sounds. Same with the body sensation. Just notice it. we will go back to this. If you prefer, stay as you are as I continue to waffle on. This simple, straightforward attitude of I'm going to sit for however long, 20 minutes, half an hour, and I'm going to stay present to whatever comes up. And I will be attending to whatever phenomena comes up, is the portal. Shikan taza in Japanese, just sitting. It is also, when you think of it, it's an act of faith. You are saying, with the simple act of sitting, everything is already there, which in the Zen language is expressed as you are already a Buddha. And here is the subtlety of Dogen. Normally, we do something in order to gain something out of it. It makes sense. It's a logic. I go for a run to feel, because I enjoy it, okay, also because it's healthy. I meditate in order to become more peaceful, have more insight, and some guys out there to achieve the non-dual, whatever that is. But Dogen is saying it's the other way around. You are already realized. There is nothing missing in you. As a human being, as a living being, you are already where you want to be. But in order to manifest it, you practice. So Dogen calls it practice realization. Is not practice in order to realize. It is practice / realization. You are a Buddha, and the way you assert it and you manifest it is by sitting. By sitting, you're saying, here I am. Here I am. Everything is as it should be. Incidentally, there is a paradox. It doesn't mean smugness. It doesn't mean I am the best guy in town. It means I am simply, I'm not special. I'm just a Buddha. I'm just a living being with no intrinsic existence. By sitting assiduously with some commitment every day, I realize my interdependence with the whole world. If you sit with your eyes closed, your ears are still open. You're open to the sound of the world. We are already in an ocean of sound. And in a way, when you go deeper with this, you realize that to say the dog barking in the street and me sitting here are separate is an oversimplification. No, we are already stepping in an ocean of sound. There is a presencing of everything, and there is a deep interconnection with every phenomenon. So that means also that when I strive, meditate, I am not cultivating a private little garden of insight for myself. No, I am, the Buddha would say, entering the stream. The person who embarks on this practice enters the stream. There is a recognition that this life, or life and death, or living and dying, is a constant flow. And by wanting to be attentive to it, I simply am willing to enter the stream. Entering the stream is a very, to me, evocative image. It's close to the Buddha's teaching. It is also present in the Western tradition with Heraclitus. You cannot step twice in the same river. What is often forgotten is that even me trying to step in the river twice, I'm also moving constantly. I'm also a river. And here is a first link to the world of therapy via the work of a neurologist who, Kurt Goldstein, was a great lover of Goethe and who was to influence people like Carl Rogers and Gestalt. He would say what some might call pathology, what some other people would call incongruence, or perhaps bad faith, or whatever name you want to give to this, is at some level an unwillingness to be part of the river. It's on some level a desire to step aside and not wanting to partake of the river. Why? Because the river goes to the sea. Because life ends into death. And if I can only cling to a straw or a little piece of wood in the river, if I can simply climb away from the river and stay with some form of thinking that will prevent me from living more fully, then perhaps I won't share into the ultimate destiny of dying. If I can play dead while I'm still alive, perhaps death won't get me. So the river, by meditating, we are saying, here I am, I'm ready to experience whatever emerges. And on one level, I am not separate from the rest of existence. Now, the other important thing that Dogen says in the Genjo Koan, Manifesting Suchness, is this is not conscious striving. It is not conscious striving. It is on one level, but only in order to get your bum on that cushion. Once you do that, it takes a life of its own. He says something remarkable, which is almost like it jumps ahead as if he already anticipates existentialism, post-existentialism, deconstruction, post-structuralism. He says, don't go around thinking that if you achieve Buddhahood, that your conscious mind will know. You won't know, because how can this tiny little conscious mind can grasp the ocean? The Dharma is an ocean. How can this little boat that is the conscious mind grasp the ocean? So this is the very opposite of conscious striving. It's the very opposite of a mental hygiene. It is the very opposite of mindfulness. It is entering the stream, being conscious as much as the effort, the initial effort takes, and then you enter the stream, and then you trust. Another example that Dogen gives, he says, people meditating together, they are joined together by what he calls imperceptible mutual aid, imperceptible mutual assistance. By having a common intent of meditating, okay, even of doing therapy or helping another, of trying to bring more understanding into our life. If we allow it, the work takes care of itself. It does its own thing. We don't, the only thing we have to do is to get out of the way. So on one level, this is the opposite of what most psychotherapy schools, including psychodynamic, including psychoanalytic school now say, making the unconscious conscious. This is the very opposite. This practice, it's about making the conscious unconscious. This is something that somebody like Bion would agree. So, some of those psychoanalysts who thought even psychoanalysis has lost its way, and it has lost its way, because even psychoanalysis is now striving to turn the mysterious, enigmatic, rich world of the unconscious into something that can be explained away, made conscious, and supposedly help us in our daily striving. It's a noble enterprise, but it is also a tremendously arrogant thing. In humanistic language, this would be thinking that the self-concept can become aligned with the organism. Forget it. This is where I concur with Rogers. The aspiration is good, but the self-concept will never become the organism. How can it? The organism, this body is dark. This body is mysterious. This body is multiple. It is traversed by complex and multiple drives, motivations, affects. It can never be unified entirely. So there are so many things already in Dogen, and we're talking about feudal Japan. We're talking about the 1200s, 13th century. There are insights which are already ahead, way ahead of its time. So practice realization. On one level, you could say this is simple. You are already a Buddha, but then the question arises, then why strive and why practice? And here is an example that Dogen mentions in the Genjo Koan. A famous Zen master, Pao Che, was fanning himself. And a monk, Zen tradition is full of these clever monks or clever dicks. He goes there and says, the nature of the wind is constancy. The wind is constant. The wind reaches everywhere. Why use a fan? And Pao Che answers, you only know the nature of the wind as constancy, but you haven't grasped yet the meaning of its reaching every place. So the monk asks, so what is the meaning then of reaching every place? And the master fans himself. And the student bows in appreciation and leaves. One translation is, the wind is everywhere. The Dharma is everywhere. We are all Buddha. Why fan yourself? Why meditate? Because if you don't sit, meditate, this Buddhahood that is everywhere won't become manifest. It has to manifest. It has to come to the fore. And the way you manifest it is through the portal of sitting in silence, doing nothing. So that's the paradox of practice realization. And this is the paradox of effortless effort. We have to try very hard in order to gain something so simple. Is it the Queen? Who is it in Alice in Wonderland? We have to run very fast to stay still. It is something like that. To say, I'm already a Buddha, I understood, I don't need to meditate, is missing the point. Equally, to cheapen meditation only in order to gain something from it, it's also missing the point. So the other linking with therapy that we can have here is by sitting in silence, we allowing presencing of everything that is alive, or everything that is alive okay, I won't go into that because I'm not sure if there is a real gap between the living and the dead. But that's another story. Presencing means, so presence, say, Carl Rogers spoke of presence. Presence is not something that I cultivate through effort, and then I become a really good humanistic therapist who has this thing, presence. I got it here in my pocket. No, I am waking up, coming to presencing. But presencing as a verb, as a movement, is already there. I just have to notice it. So presence is almost like something that you discover if you look below the surface of the sea, when you realize that our separation as islands is not really separate. Presencing is that link that is already there. So it's not a quality of the therapist. But what we need to do, perhaps, is to be able to perceive it. I am kidding myself, really, that by saying these few words, I am presenting Zen and therapy. This is such a vast field. And I can only hope to seduce you into these ideas. And then my hope is that you will be tickled, seduced enough to continue the inquiry, to continue the practice, and to find out for yourself, including joining this course that I will be teaching from April to December. I'll do 8 2-hour monthly meeting in person in London, Waterloo, and online. But you will find that there are sources, there are things everywhere if you are interested in this particular way of doing things. Okay, one more link would be awakening to what in Zen we call the Koan, the Enigma of existence. In the tradition, in order to wake up and to be more alert to the practice, the student is given each time an enigma that he works on. And some of them are famous. What is the sound of one hand? By the way, it's not one hand clapping. There's no clapping. I don't know who came up with it. One hand clap. There's no clapping. What is the sound of one hand? Or a powerful one that I like. How do you get out of a stone coffin? How do you get out of a marble stone coffin? You have been buried alive. Is your determination to live and to live fully as strong as the person who has been walled in a stone coffin? Some of them are pretty scary. But the most important enigma is the enigma you and I are experiencing this very moment, in this ordinary evening in January, is the enigma of life and death. That's the real Koan. Koan means an existential enigma that if I can face it, would reveal to me that this is for real. Now, this fact of being alive, being this body that gets sick, and boy, don't I know it. I'm still 80% there. I'm still coming out to this blooming COVID thing. This body that gets old, this body that dies, this is serious. What are you going to do about it? This is what Zen practice is about. This is real. What are you going to do about it? And what is it? What is this? What is this? What is this thing we are in? What is this life and death? So at the heart of Koan is waking up opening up to the enigma of existence. And we might try this exercise in a moment. But this is what is meant when, you must have heard the story. The Buddha was a young prince who lived a very sheltered life, was never shown anything bad, anything painful. He had all the best chocolate in the world, the best wonderful lovers, the best food, and so on and so forth. Until one day he stepped out of the palace. So the story goes. And first he notices a sick man in the street. And he's very disturbed by that. He has never seen a sick person. What happened to that man? The next thing he sees is an old person. What happened to that person? It's a shock. And the third thing he sees is a corpse. What happened there? A lifeless body. Well, welcome to reality. That's the moment of awakening. This is real, and it doesn't have to be, and this is important, it doesn't have to be a miserabilist thing. It doesn't have to be, oh, now atone for your sins, be a good boy. It's more, you have a beating heart. You are alive in your body. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with this life? This is what the grave matter of life and death is. This is what you come to realize when you practice intently. My first formal Zen retreat, we used to do dawn Zazen, and we used to do also sitting in sometime into the night. I don't know why, and I don't know what was happening to me at the time, but my perception, I was sitting in this darkened room, everybody dressed in black. The lights were off. I had this kind of hallucination, vision, call it vision, that everybody sitting there, including myself, was a skeleton. It was terrifying. And by the time it was daylight, if you've been up all night and you see the light of the morning, maybe not meditating, maybe you've been with your lover all night, the light breaking through, my goodness. There is nothing like it. So it doesn't have to be, it's not like a miserable thing, or remember you will die, memento mori. It's more like a quickening, awakening. You are alive. And life is dewdrop. It will go before you can say non-dual. It will go before you can say abracadabra. What are you going to do about it? What matters to you? What truly matters to you? And all of this spiel, I didn't really expect to talk about this. All this spiel is really about, there is an enigmatic element to life and death, which we can wake up to. Similarly, in the work of psychotherapy, it has been argued that psychotherapeutic work shouldn't only be about attachment, safety, good connections, nurturing, etc., which are all important things. It is also about the enigmatic message that we receive as children from our parents. Our parents infuse us. People who are familiar with my work will be familiar with this bit. We absorb an enigmatic message from our parents, which has to do with their own mysterious life. So even at the heart of the psychotherapeutic enterprise, there is a grappling with an enigma that it cannot really be decoded, but it can be worked on. And in that working on, something in us would unfold. I would like to invite you to one short meditation before we conclude this particular part of the evening. And again, I invite you to sit comfortably with your back straight, eyes half closed, to your being. Ask this question. What is this? This whole thing. What is this? The totality of this moment. What is this? Really, sincerely ask that question. If you do that sincerely, that means I don't know. What is this? Next time you decide to meditate on your own with people, try and ask that question sincerely from your guts. What is this? And try also and keep it as a hum in the back of your mind. You are in a long queue at the supermarket. You're getting irritated. It starts to rain. That moment, ask yourself, what is this? The totality of this existence that I am alive to now. What is this? So, to conclude, this is a practice. And people sit for entire retreats with that question. I know people who, my friend Stephen bachelor who practiced in Korea for years with just this question. Try it for yourself. Not looking for answer, by deepening the sense of wonder, deepening the sense of perplexity. This is what I mean when I say making the conscious unconscious. We don't really know. And can we be open about that? I think I'll stop here. And I'm not sure what we decided, John, whether we go straight into a small break or into a breaking room. So, John, to you, over to you.
Thank you, Manu.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Everyone.
That was really wonderful. Thank you very much for that. I think what we were going to do was take a 5-minute break and then offer some breakout rooms. Let's check in with the group.